San Diego Voice and Viewpoint newspaper, coming to you with our program from the desk of the editor. I'm happy to be in studio with Dr. Leonard Thompson as we do this week's program from an open mic standpoint. We always remind you that the Voice and Viewpoint is San Diego's oldest and only African American publication covering news from the local, city, state, community, and international arenas. And we do this every week. You can now get our paper online. You may buy it at a number of 7-Elevens, over-the-counter, or newsstands, and we're in 89 zip codes in terms of print copy, 17 cities and unincorporated areas of San Diego County. We are an adjudicated or legal publication, which means that we run your notices, be they probate, subpoenas, fictitious business, or whatever. And so we are very, very excited to be able to continue to have these discussions, and I'm just excited to have Dr. Thompson here as we start to continue this fall season.
Well, good evening, everyone. It is truly a pleasure to be with you on this Wednesday evening. So much is going on around the world. I almost want to say, as the world turns, we are literally finding out that the people are still young and restless. We are seeing that there are, some guiding lights out there, and then, yet we start still seeing that beyond the gates, there are still issues that are going on. So,
and some are searching for tomorrow.
Yes. So on this evening, we just want to just have an open mic discussion. And, Dr. Warren, I'm going to pitch it to you. We've had a lot of great conversations, but I first want to start off with, the main story that is happening around the world, and that is the murder of Brother Kirk.
Well, it's unfortunate in terms of that murder, but the murder of Charlie Kirk has almost been superseded by other acts of violence since then. Mm-hmm. Today in Pennsylvania, we had 5 policemen shot, and 3 of them died. 2 are struggling for their lives. In this season of violence, we lost people in Minnesota in the legislature. In Minnesota, we lost 2 children in church. Mm-hmm. And so the random acts of violence are continuing, and people are talking about dialing down the tone, but we're not dealing with the weapons. We have more guns in America than people. We don't want to take away the assault weapon capability. And so people want to keep doing those things. And we are in a state of flux economically. We have a president who does not seem to care about the economy or the people. It's just whatever he can get for himself. He is on his revenge kick with the people that he has put in office over a number of responsibilities, dismantling things. Health and Human Services is in such disrepair that Robert F. Kennedy Jr.'s own family is asking him to step down. Vaccines are being canceled. We have more deaths occurring in terms of measles and other outbreaks. COVID-19 boosters are no longer available to everyone. So we have some real serious issues going on. They're not being addressed. The economy is slowing way down. There's a shortage of workers because of the crackdown in terms of immigration. And even people who were legally here working, as with the case of the Hyundai Korean employees in North Carolina who came here to open a plant that the Koreans, they own Hyundai, and they were building this plant, planning to hire at least 2,000 American workers. ICE goes in, arrests 475 people with total disregard for their visas or their documents or while they're here. They lead them out in chains. South Korea has to send a plane and diplomats, and they have to fight with us to have their people released unshackled. Mm-hmm. And so all of these things are embarrassment. Meanwhile, Trump continues to take up for Putin. Putin has not only invaded Poland's airspace in violation of NATO Article 5, Trump is ignoring it, which puts all of Europe and the rest of us at risk and encourages NATO, encourages Putin to expand his reach and violate the airspace of other countries over there. So we have a real number of crises going on. And meanwhile, we have a Congress with the Republican Party holding this nation hostage. And they don't seem to listen to anyone but Donald Trump. Now, I can't figure out, has he put a hit on each of them or threatened to kill their families? Because these are supposed to be intelligent men and women. And I don't understand how they can sit back and watch the dismantling and the destruction of this nation when they have sworn an oath and have a responsibility to do something and do nothing.
Yeah, and the bigger question and the big, the what they say, the elephant in the room is, why is everybody so afraid to speak up against Donald Trump? Now, we are seeing the backlash. Just today, Jimmy Kimmel's show was suspended indefinitely. Before that, the gentleman on CBS, his show was ending, saying that they don't have the budget anymore after 11 years because he then spoke up against the president. It seems like only the conservative right that is only going to line up with the MAGA population is safe from being exempt. Now, granted, we see a lot on social media, but again, there's so much that is blocking people from speaking.
Well, we also see that Disney, which owns Hulu and a number of things, is supposedly, because of a statement that was made by one of their journalists, has settled a $50 million donation to the Trump Museum based on Trump and them being willing to sue. And so it's no longer about the rest of us in the country. No one's concerned about jobs. No one's concerned about the economic impact of what's taking place. Mm-hmm. It's just the whole country is all about Donald. Mm-hmm. And the question is, in the midst of that, people are rising up. They are fighting in court. They are winning in court. Those who resist are winning. We saw him back now sending troops to Chicago because the governor made it clear he ain't playing and he would hunt them down no matter how long it took. Mm-hmm. He backed off of that. But now he's sending troops to New Orleans
and Memphis.
And Memphis and all that. It's just, it's anything except dealing with the needs of the people. Mm-hmm. We're going to see the ripple. We had free food boxes we were giving to people. They're going to go away. Mm-hmm. A lot of medical treatment has gone away. And so it's a question of how long.
Yeah. And, I think that we have to look at all that is taking place and begin to say what is going to be the action plan. So one of the things that states are doing, especially Texas, is they're basically redistricting their, writing their lines over to get more Republicans in office. California is responding, and the governor is responding with a bill, Prop 50, to redraw our lines so we can put more Democrats in. Can we start there and let's talk about this Prop 50? Are we voting yes? We voting no? What is it all about?
Well, let's look at what's behind this. First of all, Trump is concerned about what's going to happen next. He cannot make himself have a third term because the Constitution doesn't allow it. So he's trying to restrict mail-in ballots, taking up postal boxes and everything because the Postal Service is still under the Constitution and we have to have it. And then they, being the Republicans in the House, there are 219 Republicans to 213 Democrats. Mm-hmm. And so Trump's idea, just like in his first term, he wanted to find 1,100 more votes. Now he wants to find 5 to 6 to 8 more Republicans districts, and so they redraw the boundaries so that they are made safe for Republicans because the way they draw them, they eliminate the opportunity for smaller groups to win. Okay, and so this is called gerrymandering. Redistricting normally takes place every 10 years because every 10 years under the Constitution there's a census. And after the census, there's a redistribution of the seats in Congress because the number of seats in the House are fixed at 435. And so that means that as population shift, like people move from the north to the south, the number of people in a district in the north will diminish, and those boundaries will have to be withdrawn. So the south, where the people have moved, might have enough people to pick up another district and add a vote. So the seats are moved around. California has 52 congressional seats. 12 of them are Republican. And so what Governor Newsom has done with Prop 50 is moved in the direction of redrawing boundaries. Let's look locally what it means. Locally, East County, we have Darrell Issa. He's a Republican. And that whole Republican East County district is safe for the good old boys. Okay, so now what's going to happen is the redistricting is going to redraw the boundaries of that district to make it possible for someone other than a Republican to win. That will take one of those seats away from the Republicans. And the Proposition 50 is going through the state where there are Republican members, rearranging those boundaries so that they are no longer in majority. And all we need to do is have people vote in November to put Proposition 50 on the ballot. Okay, it's not done yet, but that's what we're moving toward, getting Prop 50 there. And so this is the challenge that we have. Now, not only has California moved, we think that Governor Holcomb might do something similar in New York, but she's up for re-election, so she's got to tread kind of lightly in terms of what she does. And so we're looking at how do we be involved. The Democratic Party is making it difficult because they're doing what they have always done. They ignore those of us who have been their loyal base. And they refuse to do any real service to us. You know, Kamala Harris in 107 days raised $1 billion, but we didn't see any of that money basically in California, which is where she comes from. And our newspapers, all 200 across this country, it's the Democrats rarely do any business with us in an election cycle. Yet people take our papers into the polling place and mark the ballots based on our recommendations. And so the Democrats ignore us, and the Republican attitude is we don't need them because the handful we have are faithful and we know how they're going to vote. And so I'm urging black folks in particular to wake up and get involved. Every election is won by at least one vote. In 1964, there was a Supreme Court case by the name of Sims v. Reynolds. And Sims v. Reynolds established the principle of one man, one vote. And the concept in that case was that you cannot draw boundaries based on political election outcomes, but the boundaries have to be inclusive of all the people. That's why it's called one man, one vote. And so we are in a situation where boundaries are being drawn again, and we need to be involved. To show you how close this gets, there was a situation in Virginia a few years ago where an election came down to a tie. And you know what they did to break the tie? They put each candidate's name in a film canister, closed the canister, dropped it in a basket, shook it up, and pulled one out. That shouldn't be. There are enough of us to vote to make the difference. Now, on May 17, 1957, Dr. King gave a speech on the Mall, and the title of this speech was, "Give Us the Ballot." And he said in that speech, if you give us the ballot, we will elect men and women, men really, but we're going to say women generically, of goodwill that can pass the laws that will get the things done that we want. That was 1957, which was before the 1965 Voting Rights Act, 64 Voting Rights Act. And so now we got the Voting Rights Act and the promises of Dr. King, and we have the opportunity to vote, and we're sitting back saying, I'm not going to participate.
Well, and I also think that not only is it that they're not participating, I believe that there's a lot of negative energy out there about the power of the vote, the rigging of the vote. And people literally, to this very day, literally think that Elon Musk electronically rigged the elections to affect that Trump got in. And it almost seemed like when he was leaving, he said, look, I got you in. You know what I'm saying? Everybody wanted to know, well, what do you mean? You got him in, you know?
Well, he couldn't. First of all, the way we went through that with the debate scandal from the first time around when Trump ran and swore that he won when he lost. The bottom line is that the handling of votes is a state function. It's not a federal function. And each state contracts itself. We saw that in Arizona where they brought in that team of people after the election, and they were going through the ballots because they felt that somebody from outer space had dropped some ballots in, and all kinds of stupid stuff that was taking place. But at the end of the day, it's a state function. It's not a federal function. And then we've gone a step further. There were many people who have been incarcerated, and in some states, once their jail time is served, they still aren't allowed to vote because they're felons.
Yeah.
Well, Dr. Weber took care of that here in California, and you can be an ex-felon and you can still vote in California. Matter of fact, you can be going to get your driver's license renewed and vote. I mean, they got all kinds of ways for you to vote. And yet we're sitting back saying, well, I don't know. I don't know what we're going to do. And it shouldn't be that way, okay?
Let me ask you this question. This was posed ahead by Michelle. She said, can Trump extend his term if he ends up going to World War III?
No, he cannot. And, you know, historically, the only place that was able to be done was in Rome. Under the Roman law, Caesar was accountable to the Senate. But when martial law was declared because of a state of emergency, then his authority became absolute, but it was only for 6 months at a time, okay? And so Trump has tried to play off of some of this, calling emergency, violating the Posse Comitatus Act, which says we're not supposed to have troops on the ground in our cities. And he's doing all of these things. He got away with it in Washington because D.C. is not a state. And all of these other states, some of them, I don't think they have any Republican governors, but the governor of the state is really the commander-in-chief of the National Guard. In the case of D.C., because it's not a state, the president had the right, so he misused that right in terms of what he was doing. Okay, but Trump cannot stay in power by doing that, and because the Constitution doesn't allow it. The last person to serve 3 terms was President Roosevelt, and after he did his 12 years, we amended the Constitution to limit everybody who got elected as president that they can only serve 2 terms or 8 years.
Okay. And so what do you think is the game plan? Do you really think that he is going to try to get J.D. in office, or is it just appears that way?
Well, you know, in many respects, J.D. is more dangerous than Trump because he's not quite as dumb as Trump. And so that makes him dangerous. I don't think we need to focus on Trump or J.D. as much as we need to focus on the House of Representatives and the Senate. We have the capacity to put people in office in place of these people who are not upholding their oath. And once we get control of the House, we could impeach Trump again. Impeachment has to start in the House and the trial takes place in the Senate. Okay, so he's been safe. He's been twice impeached, but we couldn't get any place with it because he controlled the Senate. Now he controls the House. And so Trump's only concern is control. And to the extent that he prevails, we are responsible because we don't act. Now, my editorial topic this week is in spite of and not because of. And I go back to the 1960 student set-in Woolworth where four college students went to the dime store and sat down at the lunch counter and demanded to be served.
Mm-hmm.
And out of that sprung a whole scenario that spread like wildfire. Now, yes, today we can sit where we want to, but it's due in part to the outcome of that and the fact that that was the precursor in 1960 to the 1966 or 1964 Heart of Atlanta Motel v. the United States, in which the Supreme Court said that because of the Commerce Clause, no state can make a law that interferes with commerce, because since commerce is a federal issue under the Constitution, then it has a right to flow freely in every state. So that opened up the hotels and the whole bit. And let us not forget that thanks to Eisenhower's vision, we have the interstate exchange. Eisenhower is the one that gave us the interstate freeways because he saw what happened when he was a young officer trying to move a convoy from the East Coast to the West. And when he became the Allied Supreme Commander, he had a chance to see up close the significance of logistics. And that's part of how we stopped the Germans, because he closed off supply routes, you see. And supply routes for combat troops, it was interesting because the Germans were focusing on Patton because they knew that Patton was a historical military strategist. And Patton knew that wherever Rome went, they built highways as a part of the expansion so that they could logistically resupply their people. And so we have all of these things that took place that helped put us where we are today, and we have no idea how we got here, and we just kind of floating along. But yet we need to put some strong people in the House of Representatives who will uphold the oath of office, who, when they swear to protect and defend the United States from all enemies, foreign and domestic, they will do so. Right now, all of these people going along with Trump should be charged with treason and pulled out of office.
So the question is that what would it take to overpower Donald Trump's authority and as commander-in-chief and stop the abuse of power that we're seeing right now? What would it take?
Well, it's two ways it can happen. If Trump had not controlled his cabinet selection the way he did, under the 25th Amendment to the Constitution, I think it's the 25th, it would take a certain number of people of his cabinet to sign a letter that he was unfit. Mm-hmm. And that would go before Congress, and he could be set aside, the vice president. But to have J.D. Vance take over is just as bad as keeping Trump in place. Mm-hmm. And so what we need to focus on is the 2026 election, putting the right people in office. And every Republican, on October 18th, we're going to have over 5 million, maybe 10 million people doing their second No King's Day protest against Trump. Just think if every place that No King's Day is taking place, that the people are registering to vote in addition to protesting. Mm-hmm. That's what I keep writing about. Mm-hmm. Let's register to vote as you protest. Not stand there with a sign and go home, and they're going to feel good because they say, well, they might be out there, but they're not going to vote. Mm-hmm. They are afraid of the vote, and the vote is power.
And definitely the vote is power. One of the things is the question will come about is how do we move the needle? How do we get people to be excited about voting? How do we get them to realize that their votes matter? What is the message that we're sending, especially to the young people that are not as engaged?
Well, you have some historical factors working against us, Dr. Thompson. Frantz Fanon, a black psychiatrist who wrote a book called The Wretched of the Earth, he made a unique observation in that book. He says that if you have, and he was Algerian, I believe, he says if you have a person's head on the ground and your foot on their head and the head is turned sideways, even though you're pressing down, they can still breathe. He says if you want to push them to action, you have to position their heads so that their nose is in the dirt and your foot is on the back of their head, and now they must either struggle to breathe or die. We no longer find ourselves struggling to breathe because even in war, we are comfortable, life goes on, everything is okay. And in San Diego in particular, the only people who really care are the families of those men who line the decks of those ships that they go out on maneuvers for 8-10 months to protect us. Their families care. But the rest of us just gone about business. And there was a time in San Diego when a ship sailed before you and I came along that everybody stopped and realized that we were all connected. We don't have that anymore because we don't live so that we have a connection. And that's why my editorial, in spite of and not because of, I make the observation that during Jim Crow segregation, whatever achievements a black person made, they realized it was representative of all of us, from Jesse Owens in the Olympics, if you will, to the men who excelled in the military. You know, we've had over 100 black men receive the Medal of Honor. And that's a very significant thing when you consider that they did it under adverse circumstances in a country that still hated them, and yet they fought and they died for this country in spite of how the country felt about them. Yeah. Today we have individuals. We no longer have a collective. And we got to restore the collective, and prayer has to be a part of the collective. And when we do that, we can see change.
Well, Ms. Stanford just got on and said, we're going to talk about yes on Prop 50 this evening. We have already touched bases on that in the earlier part of the show. But Dr. Warren, as we transition into my question that I had on Black Men and Women United this week, can you just give a quick update on Prop 50, yes on Prop 50?
Well, it's only two things happening on Prop 50 right now. The governor signed the legislation to make it possible. Those who are opposed to it, predominantly Republicans, they started direct mail campaigns the very next day. The Democrats have yet to organize and put some money out there. They certainly are not bothering at grassroots. And that means then if they're not making dollar efforts to reach us, we're not going to vote. We're going to see it as unimportant. Yeah. And the opponents have a chance to win because the Democrats still don't take us seriously. Okay. And so it's about redrawing districts, and it's so dangerous because historically it was only done every 10 years. Now because of politics, we're moving halfway, and we could end up doing it every 2 years, if you will. We had an independent redistricting commission in California, and the governor's legislations, in effect, as I understand it, set that aside so that we could engage in this process to rearrange these districts that we need to, so that we can try to send 5 more Democrats to Congress. But truth be known, we should have been working against those 12 Republican seats all along. And every time we've had an election, we've been about everything else except putting money in those areas trying to win. Now, I'm going to show you something that is not racist, but white Republicans do. In some past elections, since California is a blue state, and there are Republicans in this state who want to help other Republicans win, you know what they did? They found states that had Republican numbers with good candidates running against Democrats. And the people here created phone banks to support the Republicans in those states to get their people out to vote. So they were helping them. We got to get our people to vote, period. There are enough of us. In California, there are more registered independents than there are Republicans. If the independents were appealed to, they could vote. And there are many people who are leaving the Democratic Party becoming independent because the Democratic Party is not doing anything. So these are some of the answers to the questions. We need to start talking and be meaningful. Yesterday, there was a Zoom meeting of the MLK Democratic Club. And it's so sad because I remember from the start of this club, it really didn't do anything. We really never understood how a Democratic club should function and how they support individual candidates. And what this club has done over the years is when elections were tight, they have let outside people from the San Diego County Democratic Club come into the organization, take over their election, take over membership, and use them to validate who those people wanted in office. And that's because we won't take time to understand how things are working.
Yeah, and I think that it's very important that this is a time that we're going to have to read. We're not going to have to. We can't be spoon-fed. We're going to have to do our research and really, really understand what is taking place and what is at stake at this point. Here's one from Michelle Thompson. I finally heard a news anchor refer to the United States, the divided states of America. I thought they couldn't make those references like that.
Well, they can make those references because of freedom of speech. And that's the next big thing that's being tested, the First Amendment, because what is being said by the Trump Department of Justice is that they're going to go after anybody who engages in hate speech. The reality is people have a constitutional right to engage in hate speech. They can say, I hate you. We have that old Supreme Court case about how far do your rights extend? Can a person holler fire in a crowded theater and get away with it because they have a right to holler? Well, the answer is no, because some justices have said your right extends as far as your nose. Your right does not extend to the point that you can interfere with the rights of others. But this Department of Justice is now going to do a hate speech campaign. So anybody that says they don't like somebody or that they want to get somebody, all of a sudden they're going to be after them. And the Democrats, when Obama was first elected, there were some people someplace in the Midwest that had a raffle, and they started taking bets on who was going to kill him, okay? And they thought it was funny. When he was first elected, the sales went up in terms of guns and ammunition, and the research showed that the people doing the buying were white females. Well, the Secret Service went in to this little community and made it very clear that threats against the president are not jokes, and they are not covered by your First Amendment right. And if you do that, we will come get you. Okay? This group here now using Charlie Kirk as the excuse, and that's all they're doing is using him as excuse. Let us be clear. Charlie Kirk was no angel. He didn't walk on water. Okay? He was an ultra-conservative. All indications are he really wasn't all that crazy about black folks. Okay, so now all of a sudden we're going to get worked up over Charlie. It's always sad when someone dies, but I raised the question. Statistics say that over 12 people are killed every day in this country by a handgun. And I don't see people getting upset every time a black person dies, okay? But all of a sudden, death is going to be relegated to what race you are in terms of how upset we're going to be. It's very significant. The killer in Minnesota legislators, the killer of the kids, the killer of the black man in Minnesota who was stopped by the police and said she was using a taser and shot him with her gun. All of these instances, the crazy guy in Mother Emanuel's church killing all these people, all these people were white folks doing this killing. But all we want to talk about is violence and guns, but we don't want to take the guns away. All right.
And I think one of the things that we have to do is, the sad thing about it is that we're seeing so many people murdered in our country daily, to the point I believe that people have become numb. And if you look at the news, sometimes I say, don't look at the news for the first 10 minutes. Because the first 10 minutes, they're going to give you blood, guts, and gore. People done got shot. People done died. Everything else of that nature. And so by the time you get to the weather report, you're so traumatized with what you heard. You know what I'm saying? Because there is so much going on. We have to now say to ourselves, and where do we go from here? And I ask the question because I hear this, and you said it today. You said ultra-conservatism. So I want to know, is conservatism synonymous with racism?
No.
Because right now, that's what we're seeing.
Well, but Dr. Thompson, you keep asking this question. Conservatism has become, in some places, a code word for racism. Okay, but conservatism, there's nothing wrong with conservatism. As I've said before, when I was an undergraduate student at Howard, as a political scientist, we wrote this statement on the board. A liberal is one whose interest is not at stake, and people become conservative when they have something to conserve. So all of us are conservative to some degree. Mm-hmm. The issue of race comes into the picture because those who are most conservative have the power to influence others that are not at their same economic level. Mm-hmm. There's nothing that says that every Democrat is LGBTQ and a crook and an immigrant and all of that. No more than every white person is saved, filled with the Holy Spirit and sanctified. Mm-hmm. Those things don't apply. Mm-hmm. And then the church has been misused. Religion has been misused. I stressed the other day in my conversation, a lot of this started in the 80s with Jerry Falwell, with the silent majority, and having his church rise up against the LGBTQ community. And so we've gotten comfortable suggesting that anyone who is not conservative does not love the Lord or believe in Christ, and that's not true. Yes, racism is given a lot of different names. DEI is racist. Woke is racist. Affirmative action is racist. The whole idea that you need to be certified to do business is racist because the certification is not for us. It's for the white people who use their wives and girlfriends and pretend that they are disadvantaged to take what few pennies are on the table for us when we have a right to participate.
Dr. Warren, I'm concerned because I don't really believe that people of color can be racist. I think they could be prejudiced, they could be discriminatory, but in the true sense of racism, you have to have the power to implement your laws or things to empower you to be racist. So I think that racism is also couched in that you have the power to actually make it come to pass.
Well, let's redefine racism, okay? Because that will help in terms of the discussion from an anthropological standpoint. If I take the position, almost using some logic, if I take the position that all people of color are illegal aliens, and all illegal aliens are criminals. So therefore, if I encounter you and discover that you are illegally here, then I assume that you are a criminal. I assume that you hate us. I assume all these things about you based on how I see you. That's racism. Okay. I see you as black. I don't see you as a black doctor, lawyer, judge, or Indian chief. I just see you as one of them dark things moving around, so you must be dangerous. When I get on the elevator and the white woman grabs her purse and clutches it in a corner as if someone wants her purse, I think it's presumptuous for her to assume that they want either her or her purse. 'Cause both of them could be undesirable. But the mental thing says, oh, this must be the case, he's after me. That's racism. And so black people can dislike other black people that we know are crooked, and we can dislike white people, but it does not follow that all white people are bad. Yeah. And most black people have the ability to distinguish good from bad among people, including white folks, because a lot of us have died helping white people, okay? But it ain't a bunch of white people that died helping us, okay, because of how that stereotype mind. That's what Kamala Harris got an education in this campaign. She thought that because she was a woman and Trump was against women, that women won't galvanize toward her. White women said, oh, no, we're not going to galvanize with Aunt Jemima. We're going to stay over here with the masters of the plantation so we can keep y'all in your place.
Yeah. So as we move forward, so much is going on in the climate of our country. Um, it's like, the word assassination versus murder. You know, I'm still to this day, the lawmakers that were killed in other states, they said they were murdered, but they didn't use the word assassination. What really constitute lowering the flags in federal buildings down to half mast? Are there any regulations, or is this at the will of the president?
Dr. Thompson, you get to be real interesting. Because, first of all, um, you're moving into some legal areas, okay? First of all, murder is not a federal crime. Murder is a state crime. So when the feds come in, they can only come in from the standpoint that the death of a person is a violation of their civil rights, and therefore the feds can investigate the violation and get a conviction on the rights violation. That's the key element from there. Assassination, assassination is a term that has basically been used to substitute murder when the people killed hold political positions because they're killed because of their positions. Now, that's very interesting because the definition of murder is kind of interesting. When the courts talk about murder, they get this MOMS test, MOM test that's used. And so they say that they have to have the motive, they have the opportunity, and they have the means. So those become some basic elements for first-degree murder, and that's what we want to attach the death penalty to in terms of those things. And so I don't think we need to get into a semantics about murder and assassination. Both represents the loss of life.
Mm-hmm.
Murder, homicide is defined as the taking of the life of another human being.
Mm-hmm.
Manslaughter is defined as the unintentional taking of the life of another human being. And so in both cases, people are dead. And so the real issue right now is there's an element that wants to raise the temperature, and Trump has been responsible for this. When he told Proud Boys, stand down and stand aside, he got followers, especially after letting all those people pardon out of jail. He got followers that believe that if we kill folks, we do a good deed for him.
Mm-hmm.
And that's where the danger is and how the temperature is going up.
I look at where we're at, and I think that it's a weird thing that in 2025, we're still talking about race and racism and the division of a country. My question is how long do you really think that we're going to go this route before we get to a point of no return?
Well, the sociologists always refer to a pendulum that swings. And the pendulum has always moved so far and then it comes back. That's why Dr. King talked about the moral arch bends, and it slowly bends, okay, but it bends. All I have to do is look at my Bible and go to Ecclesiastes 3. Mm-hmm. 1, unto everything there's a time and a season. Mm-hmm. And so we are in a season of Trump. We've been in a season of prohibition. We've been in a season of Jim Crow. We've been in a season, as Nina Simone said, of strange fruit hanging, in terms of people feeling at ease, lynching us, hanging us, thinking that it's okay to do so. These are seasons. But as much as we don't want to mention it, one of my favorite people to remind folks of is Thomas Jefferson. And Thomas Jefferson said, eternal vigilance is the price of freedom. Mm-hmm. And we are no longer being vigilant. Marcus Garvey referred to us as a sleeping giant. Mm-hmm. We just taking a nap. We on recess while everybody else is up planning. We saw that with Project 2025. Yeah. And the Democrats, if they had any sense, they would be engaged in a counter 2025 now in preparing for 2026. Yeah. But they don't seem to have the ability or the stick-to-itness or the collective unity to do so. So they will argue on the Titanic over which row they're going to sit in when everybody up front sees the iceberg.
One of the things as we begin to wind down and begin to look at it, Feds today lowered interest rates. How much is that, do you think, is real, or was Trump pushed?
I think it was a terrible mistake. I think that, see, again, we don't read. There was a reason we established the Federal Reserve Board as an independent entity. And why Jerome Powell caved, I don't know if that new guy that Trump stuck on the board and that lady stepping down, I believe he probably forced the lady to step down to create the vacancy. I'm glad that Sister Cook is still there, and she's not giving in, but she can't do it all along. And you know, the Federal Reserve, we had a member of our community who served as a vice chair of the Federal Reserve Board for a season. That was William Jones. Most people don't know that he was a member of the Federal Reserve Board on the Western region for some time. The credibility of the United States in terms of our monetary posture is going down the toilet. Everything about that lowering of interest rates does not coincide with why the rates were up and what we've been trying to do. And so Trump got his way on that, as he seems to get on everything. But I want to tell you a couple of things. I make an observation. Donald Trump is in his position, I believe, as an act of God's judgment for a nation that's turned its back. And history tells us that of 20 great civilizations in the history of mankind, most of them have collapsed from within. So Trump is on a mission. But like Nebuchadnezzar in the Bible, his time is limited, and there's no guarantee. And in many respects, with all of his Bitcoin stuff and selling and making deals for money, you know, you have to read that portion in the Bible where Jesus talks about the rich man who filled his barns up, and when everything was all stuff, he sat back and said, now I'm going to relax and enjoy all my wealth. And he says, thou fool, this night thy soul is required of thee. Donald Trump ain't getting no younger. And I don't believe any of his proteges can hold it together when he's gone. And so all we have to do, we need to stay the course. Register, vote, read, get informed, demonstrate, get involved. All over the world, we see people marshaling their resources to get things done. So how is it that they can do that and we can't? It's crazy.
And that's the thing. And a lot of times people want to see the big movement, but let's start with the little movement within you, within your street, within your community, and you can grow it. And then also we're going to have to still continue to challenge the churches to get actively involved and be open to be that meeting space where people can come into safe environments and have real conversation. And that's the key thing about this, Dr. Warren, is having conversations don't mean you're going to agree. Having conversations is just really just hashing things out and getting an understanding where you stand and where I stand. But conversations don't always mean that they're going to always be happy or they're going to be comfortable.
Well, you know, on Black Men and Women United, I made this observation this week. Joan Kropp up at USD left a Center for Peace and Justice. She built 4 or 5 of them around the country. And the thing about that concept, which we don't get here, back east, people come together in the evenings to discuss issues, to plan for the future. When I was vice president of the National Institute of Public Management, a public policy think tank, my area of specialty was social insurance and income security. And there were many a times that my president and I, we flew up to Harvard in the evenings for dinner meetings with the people who were out of power, and we sat and we planned labor legislation and all these different things that we wanted to do when we got power again. And so, but people came together to talk. I shared the other day that they also had a thing back east called the gatherings, and where people came together and they just sat around and they talked.
Mhm.
They had discussion. They weren't there fighting, I'm right, you wrong, I don't want to hear what you say. They understood the exchange of ideas in the marketplace
Mhm.
was a key element to growth and development.
Mhm.
We don't do any of that.
Mhm.
We only want to come together when we want to argue about something. We want to spend 15 minutes at it, and we don't give a damn what anybody else thinks or says.
Mhm.
And that's a part of our problem. We can never be a collective again if we can't talk.
Mhm.
We can never pray if we can't talk. We can't do these things that need to be done.
Mhm.
So I think your mission and mine, and it starts with the pastors, because just because a person is a pastor doesn't mean he's a listener,
Mhm.
okay? A whole lot of them just listening to themselves, and if God gets a word in, it's an accident. We need to be so that we can look at the good of the whole, and we can bring people together so that they want to hear and discuss, and then we got something to work with.
Yeah, and I think it's really, really, really important that we begin to go back to having those type of conversations where we are just having general conversation and really asking questions. And like this last Black Men and Women United, it wasn't that I was coming with the answer. I just want to hear a question being answered from the different perspectives, because every time you talk, everybody's not going to see eye to eye, but you can see the different perspectives. And sometimes it comes from the era that they grew up in. Sometimes it's about their experience. And sometimes it's about their inexperience. Because again, Donald Trump, and I have to give him credit. He said America is made everything. And he said, and I thought what was so powerful. He said, yes, America's made everything. We just did it all. You know what I'm saying? We made the light bulb. We made the stoplight. And he just kept, in every
instance, it was a black man.
It was a black man.
It was Latimer. It was Latimer there. It was Latimer that did the break, okay?
Mm-hmm.
It was Henson that carried Perry when he couldn't walk, okay? All of the stuff. Eli Whitley and the carton gin. And,
Exactly.
And the ironing board and all those things. I want to, LaTanya West makes an observation for us here when she says, stay the course and remember that social media is a snapshot of a moment, not reality.
Mm-hmm.
And the tragedy and the truth in that statement is found in the fact I'm observing people now. I see people wherever they are. They can be crossing the street, getting in the elevator, anything they're doing, all they see is that cell phone in front of them. They don't see nobody around them. If you put them in a social place where there's somebody else, they're uncomfortable. Immediately they pull out their cell phone.
Mm-hmm.
Everybody's walking around looking at a phone and not looking at where they are, who they are near, not making friends. Man is created as a social interacting being. So when you cut that off and you start cutting off your connection to humanity, then you start reinforcing the stage for the madness that we see.
Mm-hmm.
But, hey, you can't make people, so.
Well, and that's one of the things that we have to always think about is sometimes we have to be very, and not sometimes, but all the time, we have to be very intentional because phones can be very addictive. Because you could get on there and literally it's almost entertaining. It's not reality, but you'll sit up there and you might, I'm just going to go check my email. And after you check your email, the email and the algorithms will say, oh, well, he looked at his bank statement the other day. So now when I go look at my email, all on the side, they're advertising different bank things. You know what I'm saying? If I go to Amazon and look up printers for the next week or so, all I'm going to see is printers. And they keep engaging you based on the algorithms. And so it's kind of like Big Brother,
Yeah, but you have the ability to retire that stuff. It's tragedy that some families have to have a bucket when they get ready to have dinner. They got to make everybody put their phone in the bucket so they can eat.
Mm-hmm.
That's ridiculous. Whatever happened to development of independent thought and understanding and the ability to function? I can't remember this guy's name that wrote a book about 40 years ago about people calling us a nation of sheep. Everybody's just following whatever is going on. And it's my contention, if you're not a follower, you got a chance for greatness.
Mm-hmm.
And so we want to lead people back to that greatness. That's my mission in my last days to share people what they need to think about and look at. You know, the archives in Washington, D.C., my office is set across the street with a window facing it. And on the back side of the archives, these words were printed in bold letters, "The past is prologue." And you got to know something about where you've been to understand where you can go and what you're doing.
Okay.
You know, we don't. If we understood the fights that we had in this state to get democracy, to get the vote, if we understood how back in 1950 there was a black man named Gus Hawkins during Unruh's time who looked like he was white because he was from Shreveport, but he was black. And he had been in the assembly long enough to become speaker. And what the white folks did was, we ain't ready for a black speaker yet, so they created the Watts District and sent him to Congress. And we saw what happened when they let Willie Brown become speaker. They had to change the law and limit terms to get him out because he understood power. And so there's always been a fear of black people getting in power because there's always the assumption that we're going to do unto them what they did unto us. But we don't think that way. We don't think like that. So this is important.
With the last few minutes that we have, Dr. Warren, can you give us an update on the San Diego Voice and Viewpoint? I know a lot of big things are happening. Thank you for putting together, and your team putting together the community calendar, which is being very useful, and very excited about the transitions and things that are taking place. But I know other big things are coming your way. Gala's coming up, you know, we're preparing for that. But what other good things are happening?
Well, I think the biggest thing that we can have happen is have people in this community who haven't done so return to reading the paper, return to sharing your views with us, return to letting the paper be your trusted messenger instead of Facebook and Instagram and TikTok and all that other stuff. And I'm not saying as a young person that you can't follow social media, but you should not follow social media to the exclusion of your roots and your history and your obligation. By virtue of your blackness, you have an obligation to the people who came before you that made it possible for you to have what you have today. You're not just here because you are a free agent and you so smart and pretty that you can just make anything happen and so to hell with everybody else. You got obligations. And I want to see people step up like our generation did 50 years ago when we turned this place upside down, brought civil rights, justice, and equality and all those things. And we died, some of us died for it, but we died because, as the last poets used to say, it's our right to die for a cause, but not just because. And we weren't dying just because, we were dying for a cause. And if you haven't found something you die for, then you don't really know what to live for. And so get back in touch with your roots. Join us on Black Men and Women United. Get your email address to us so you can come in on Tuesday morning and be a part of this kitchen table discussion as we celebrate who we are and what we're doing. We want you. Don't wait till you have a need. We are not your neighborly, friendly ATM. Bring a prayer to need and get a result. No. Let's start doing something for others before you have a need.
With that being said, this is From the Desk of the Editor with Dr. John Warren, right here on GOD Radio 1. You all have a blessed evening. See you next week.